Because okay, so good afternoon to everyone once again, and we welcome you to the third webinar of the webinar series that we have been organizing on how to debunk disinformation, misinformation, information asymmetry, basically. So today's webinar is on debunking print and visual disinformation and misinformation, and we will also be discussing about the role of responsible journalism. Today's session is going to be conducted by Ms. Smita Sharma, photojournalist and contributing editor, India Ahead. Today's session will focus on debunking false information.
Sucharita, I just want to cut you off right now because I'm not the contributing editor of India Ahead. There is another journalist by the same name, and this confusion happens sometimes. I am the photojournalist, and she's the journalist who works in India. I work internationally. She works for the Indian media. So I just want to clarify this.
Our sincere apologies. So yeah, I will be briefly introducing Smita to all the participants. Just to also mention that we have participants from India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka today with us. So without any further ado, let me first introduce formally Smita, and I hope this time I'll be correct. So Smita Sharma is an award-winning photojournalist based in Delhi who has been documenting gender issues, sexual crimes, and human trafficking in the global south through long-form visual narratives. She is a Tate Fellow and an IWMF reporting fellow. She has received Amnesty International Media Award and many other awards like the Last Photos Advocacy Award, One World Media Award for her short film Rebel with a Cause. Her work has been published in various platforms, including National Geographic Magazine, the New York Times, BBC World, Channel 4, amongst many others, and exhibited as well as shown globally, including at the UN headquarters in the New York. Smita, being a photojournalist, has been capturing and using powerful images to share narratives of the women who are lesser represented in the mainstream. Very recently, she delivered a talk at the prestigious official Tate conference. A link of this has already been shared in our WhatsApp group for the perusal of all the participants. So we are really glad to have you, Smita, with us on board today. And I'm sure everybody is eagerly waiting to listen to you. So without any further ado, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sucharita. And welcome everyone. So before I start the session, if it's possible, I would want a very quick introduction to everyone. Where are you from and where you are working? Just a short introduction if you don't mind. So should we start? Yeah. Okay, in my screen, there's, I can see Apu Khapak. She's the first one in my screen. So do you mind? Yeah. You need to unmute. So everybody needs to unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, Apu.
Yeah,
Hi.
I'm Apu Kapak. I'm Apu Kapak from Arunachal Pradesh. I am a sub-editor with Echo of Arunachal, the oldest daily from the state.
Thank you. Thanks, Apu.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on my screen is D. This is the name that I can see.
Deepal Trivedi. If you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Deepal Trivedi. I was the former editor of Mirror. I launched Mirror, and now I've launched my own startup. It's called Vibes of India. Yeah. Nice to see you, Smita.
Nice to meet you too. All right, next in my screen is Nirupama.
Hi, good afternoon all. I'm Nirupama from Asianet News Kannada. I'm leading Digital News Kannada. Even I have been doing fellowship of on fact checking conducted by Meta. So it's my pleasure to be with this team as well.
Thank you so much. All right, next is Antara Bose.
Hi, Smita.
Hi. Yeah.
So yeah, I am now a freelance journalist. I used to work with the Telegram for the past 12 years, and now I have my own startup for the viral company. So we do a lot of digital stories and videos. Yeah.
What is it called? Sorry, I didn't get the name.
It's called the Viral Company.
The
Viral Company.
okay.
Viral component, right?
Company.
Company. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Viral Company.
Okay.
Okay. Pavan Mathema. I hope I've pronounced it correctly. Hi.
Yes, that's correct. Hi, I'm Pavan. I'm from Nepal. I am currently the chief correspondent for the Kathmandu Bureau of AFP, the wire agency. I'm glad to be here.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. Kamal.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kamaljeet Sandhu. I'm working as a deputy editor with India Today. So mostly I cover home affairs. I travel across the country. I was in Punjab for the past 2.5 months. And I've attended a few courses of the Disinformation campaign. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. Kaniza Garari.
Hi, I'm Kaniza Garari here, and I worked with Deccan Chronicle earlier. Now I'm with Indie Global Media Network. Glad to meet all of you.
Thank you. Okay, Joyshri Usham.
Hi, hi Smita and hi everyone. I'm Joyce Usham. I'm from Manipur. I'm an associate editor for Impact News. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Isabella Gurung. You have to unmute, Isabella. I think there's a problem with her network. Can you hear us? We can see you.
Isabella, you have to unmute yourself and speak.
She's not able to unmute. I think you're talking from the phone. Are you on the phone right now? Okay, so you're not able to get the button for unmuting, I guess, right?
Okay. So one thing, you can briefly introduce yourself in the chat box.
Sounds good. All right, so we will go to AM. That's the name that I can see on my screen.
No, that's basically from Cuts.
Okay.
So basically,
All
we
right.
have kept a spare machine for any emergency. So that's it.
All right. Okay. So Nilanjana Roland.
I'm
Nilanjani, sorry.
Hi, I'm Nilanjani Roland from Sri Lanka. I am freelance journalist now. I'm working for the Priya Kesari, an Asian-based news for ucnews.com.
Nice to meet you. All right. Tahia Rubayat.
Hi, this is Tahia Rubayat Topola. I am from Bangladesh. I'm working as a staff reporter and newscaster in BBC News.
Okay, nice to meet you. All right, Sharada Ihangir. I'm sorry.
Lahangir, Sharada Lahangir.
Lahangir, okay. It was looking like
Hi, Smita. Hi, everyone. I'm Sharda Lahangir. I based in Bhubaneswar, and I worked with ANI and couple of news channel like G and a couple of vernacular news channel also. I have 25 years of experience in television, print, and as well as digital. Right now, I am a freelance journalist. Thank you.
Thank you. Shahana Ghosh.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Sahana. I'm a science and environment journalist working with Mongabay India, which is the India Bureau of the Global Mongabay platform. And I report on climate change and biodiversity. So I'm here to hear more from you and others. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Okay, Aditi Tandon.
Yeah, hi. My name is Aditi. I'm also with Mongabay India. I'm the production editor, so I head the desk here. And I have also been trained in fact checking, and I'm working on developing my skills further in this. So I'm really interested in today's session.
Thank you. All right. Did I miss anyone? Devjani. I think I missed Devjani, right?
Yeah, hi. Am I visible to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Ismita. Hi. So I'm Devjani and I am a freelancer. I work for a couple of dailies in Jharkhand, including the Times of India and Morning India. Right now, I am also pursuing my PhD. I'm in Punjab right now, Central University of Punjab, and I am a junior research fellow with the University Grants Commission UGC. So I'm working on gender and ICT interactions.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So
we also have Falguni Rashid from Bangladesh.
Hi, Falguni.
Hi, Smita. I'm Falguni. I'm working as a senior journalist here in Bangladesh in a private news channel. So I'm working in various bit of journalism. So I think this session will be very useful for me. Very looking forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think we are done with the introduction. Did I miss anyone out?
No.
All right. All right. So before I start with the presentation, I'll try my best to make it more interactive. If you have any questions, you can ask me or you can note it down and we'll have a question Q&A at the end. So before we start, I want to ask a question to all of you. You can unmute, you don't have to be on video if you don't want, but talking about digital vision, this is the age where we kind of have a bombardment of visuals, whether it is through news channels, whether it is on the internet, whether it's through your smartphone, through various apps, social media. We all see so many images, and sometimes there are certain images that are sent and which are circulated, which could be fake, which could be manipulated with an agenda. So how many of you think that manipulation of photographs happens now with digital age? How many of you think it is something that has been happening for the past couple of years? It did not happen before.
Yes, agreed. It's happening a lot.
It's happening a lot, but how many of you think it did not before, it's happening now? Let's say, for example, let's take a tab of timeline of 10 years. So we are in 2022, and let's say like from middle of 2005, 2006, we are seeing a lot of digital photographs, right? Manipulation. So do you think before this internet and before the digital cameras came, there was any image manipulation done before?
It was done, but the number was less. It was not at this high a scale. And maybe the technique of manipulation also was very easy to identify. What is now happening is the difference between the manipulation and the real is difficult to understand. So you need to have a back-end team to tell you, yes, this is a manipulated photograph, or you will take your own time to understand that, yes, this has been manipulated. So there is what the digital age has also done is it has also created a lot of doubts. So there are many of us who don't actually believe something when we see it first, because we don't know how much is true and how much is manipulated. So the doubt factor in us as journalists is very high now, meaning I don't take anything virtually 100% to be true until and unless I verify it. And I ask the same to my family and my friends. So it goes for everything, right from the photographs to the news to everything.
Okay.
See, we stay in a social media age. There is mobile phone in the hands of all people, and most of them are socially active. The fact that the mobile phone, and if you look at the numbers, share numbers, you will understand that people are consuming news, they're consuming information, whether it's on mobile or on Facebook or otherwise. So again, to get to the source of that particular information, and you would remember recently when the DOT and the others, even Ministry of Home Affairs, when they had called in social media giants to say that we would want to know what's the source of this information which has been put out. And now even when they were saying there were multiplicity, whether it was in cases of riots or other places, those mass or bulk messages cannot be sent. So the government does realize it. I think the journalists do realize it. Also, at one point of time, the credibility, because some of the news channels, when we've seen war images, currently the Russia-Ukraine thing is on, that some of the manipulated images or the past images make it through. So it's doubly tough for all of us. And also, when these images are either mixed up and when facts and fiction mixed together, it's very difficult to convince a normal person. And that is why we have to be extremely careful. And the fact that we are doing this particular project, the disinformation campaign and everything, itself points out to the realization about how things are. And also, it is not just that it percolates down to us, the common denominator and the common man and a woman. And that is where it is very important.
Thank you.
I think, this is Aditi. I think that, I mean, it used to happen earlier, but probably the purpose has changed over time. And of course, distribution channels that everyone said. But I wonder, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I wonder if the purpose of manipulation of images has changed over time.
Very interesting points. I'm noting some of the points because I'm going to discuss them. Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree with Aditi and all that manipulation of photographs, I think, has been in history ever since Abraham Lincoln was the president, when he first raised his voice against manipulation of his pictures. But at present, the purpose and the motive, the motive for manipulating pictures, I think that has changed quite a bit. And plus, it's very good that there is awareness among people, rising awareness among people to even verify. Like, we've not heard of fact checkers and myth breakers before. And of course, but I would add that this is not penetrated to the real India. So they still get carried away by manipulated pictures and, photographs that are very different, that display something very contradictory to the existing realities.
What do you mean by real India? You mean the masses?
I mean the masses, I mean all of us. Like, if there's something happening in Ukraine, and if I'm living in a non-cosmopolitan place where even internet is an issue, I might just believe whatever garbage I get on my WhatsApp. And I think this is what is happening when it comes to photographs or videos.
All right.
You can manipulate the purpose the way you want.
I think the most vulnerable group that we have encountered both in urban areas, as largely in urban areas I would talk of, are the chunk of senior citizens and mostly homemakers. We find a lot of homemakers forwarding a lot of and sometimes a lot of information which is not correct. And a lot of families see these. So in the family groups, you have a whole lot of people telling each other that please don't get into this trap. But explaining to them is a big challenge.
I think so. Photographs are much more convincing, rather than the print or any other format of communication. So it's, they really hit you. And they convince you better, like a picture is 1,000 words.
Yes.
You can even fake 1,000 words with a picture.
Yes.
We are also getting answers in the chat box, Meeta, if you can also refer.
Okay.
Deepal has spoken. We have got Sarada Lahangi was done earlier too. And Nirupama, people are active on social media more, so it's being highlighted very easily.
Okay, interesting discussions, and whatever you all have said, it is true. And but with this, I would say, confusion and a dangerous state that we are in, with this disinformation, there is always a step that we can take to verify. And what are steps to verify? These are some things, especially when it comes to images, because I'm a photojournalist, I deal with images, right? So, and as you said, that photograph speaks 1,000 words. People believe when they say something, not necessarily when they read something. So how do you break that facade to verify that something is not manipulated? This is something which I'm going to discuss at some point of time. And Kaniza, when we're talking about senior citizen, you can add my father to the list. I have a problem at home when I have to explain something to him because he believes what he sees. And when I tell him it is propaganda, do not believe this is fake, he doesn't take my words seriously, but he's my father, so you can understand. All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen and can all of you see my screen? Okay, so when we talk about visual journalism, right? You are informing something visually. There are few things that we need to keep in mind. First thing is that, is the image altered? Has this image been doctored? And by alteration, I'm sure all of you know what Photoshop is. You know, removing something from the photograph, adding something to make it more convincing. For example, you know, when the Trump was elected in 2020, and the next day when, you know, there was a protest, and I was there in the protest, I was covering that. And at that point of time, I remember there was a huge discussion on social media that it was, you know, there were just a few photographs that were highlighted that there is a lot of violence, but to tell you the truth, the violence was not as much. It was just a few places. But then again, what do you want to focus, right? So there are two parties. One party is saying that, look, these are not peaceful protesters, they are looting, they are creating disturbances. And then there is another group of people who are saying that, well, look at the number of people who came to see the president being sworn in, right? And then you have this image of, it was a bird's eye view image of the Capitol with a lot of crowd when Obama was sworn in and when Trump was sworn in. And then it was kind of, there was a huge discussion on social media that, oh, these are not real crowds, these have been fake, you know, not many people attended. So these are things that we encounter every day. And that is the reason why our role as journalists, as photojournalists, as editor becomes important, because what is it that you are going to share and whether what you're sharing is the truth. So back in the day, before the digital era, there was something called analog photography, right? All of you remember the 35mm film camera, right? And you believed that when you took a photograph with the film camera, you could not manipulate it because that is what it was, right? And to make things similar in the digital format, there is something which is called the RAW. So raw image is basically essentially a digital negative. So after the presentation, I'm going to open my work the way I work, to show like how we work in the international media and how do we disseminate the work that we do to the editors, you know, because we all shoot raw images. And once you shoot raw, you cannot manipulate it. It is what it is. So I'm going to show that later. I'm just keeping a note of that. So again, I spoke about manipulation. Now the next thing is staging. So a lot of people are not aware, especially, you know, I see a lot of young journalists who just graduate out of J school and they're out there in the field. And sometimes they are at somebody's house and they are shooting and they are kind of directing that, can you look this side? Can you tell me how you were feeling? And they try to alter the situation. For example, if there is a death by accident and you are going to report, and this is someone who is pretty, well known, and you go to that person's house and you try to show that people are mourning, And you see that people are just sitting in silence, and you feel that, okay, this is such a boring image, I need to do something. So then you call somebody from there and you start questioning that person, that how is he related to you? When was the last time you saw him? How do you feel? And questions that are evoking emotions, right? And then the person starts crying. And then you ask the person, please go inside and sit. So when the person goes inside and sits with the other person, that's when you get the photograph. So you're getting the emotion, you're getting all the people who are mourning, but this particular photograph is unethical because you have manipulated the scene. And that is what staging is. You're trying to get something which is not there, and you're trying to induce emotions or any kind of physical change so that your photograph looks better. So when we work in the international media, and if something like that happens, and it has happened, which I'm going to show some examples, if that happens, you are blacklisted. You lose your job and you're blacklisted. And for the rest of your life, you either work in fashion or food or perhaps, wedding photography. So just saying. And then I spoke a little bit about composite. So what composite is, I'm going to come to that later when I show some of the examples. So now when we talk about the past, let's talk a little bit about history. So here you can see Josef Stalin, right, and Nikolai Yevov. And this was a photograph. Again, it was shot in analog. So in the darkroom practice, where you're using chemicals to make a positive, which is to make a print, right? Is it possible to digitally manipulate? Was it done before? It was done. And this was the photograph that was published. This was the official photograph that was published, right? So these kind of manipulation has happened earlier. Now this is history. And it was the official photograph that was released. And it was the original photograph that was taken. And this is the official photograph that was released. So this is a very famous photograph. I don't know if you've seen this. This is of the Soviet soldiers, raising the flag after the end of the World War II, Second World War. And if you look very closely, I'll come to the original photograph. So this is the original. And when the Russian government was publishing, they made manipulation to this photograph. First of all, you can see the man who is supporting the other guy who's holding the flag, right? You can see he's wearing two watches. Can you see that? So when the government saw that this guy is wearing two watches, they thought that maybe people will think that our soldiers are going about looting people, and this is going to send a wrong information. So they manipulated the image. This was the image that was published. They added a lot of smoke. They added a bit of skyline. They added a lot of other things to make, it more dramatic and appealing to the public. But later found out that the soldier who was wearing two watches, he was actually wearing one watch and the other watch was a compass. So because they thought it could mislead people, they made that change. Again, the Queen. And you can see the one which was manipulated and published. And on the right is the image, how it was taken. So this was a famous photograph of the Iran missile launch. It was, all the leading for newspapers in the world covered it, that Iran finally nuclear power, blah, blah, blah. And this was, again, this was sent by the PR of the government, the Iranian government. And later it was found out that one of the missiles did not launch. So it was a failure, and they were embarrassed to show that failure in front of people and to the entire world. So they made that fourth one, and this is the photograph that they released to the public. I'm sure you must have seen this photograph. We all have seen this photograph, right? And mesmerized and shocked that what happened to this guy? Oh my God, just look at him, the last minute of his life. Well, this is a fake photo. This is not a real photo. So this is a photograph. This photograph was manipulated by somebody called Peter Guzli, and he did it not with a bad purpose. He did it just to share it with his friends. And when he shared it with friends, somebody from there leaked it and it became viral and it was shown throughout the world. So this is a fake photo. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about staging. So I'm sure you know about World Press Photo. It's one of the pioneers, the leaders of the photography, and it's a very prestigious institute, and they give out awards to the best photographers, in photojournalism. So there was a project which was awarded a few years ago by Giovanni Troillo, an Italian photographer, and he portrayed a Belgian town with a lot of problems, and this is an image from there, but this was not the problematic image. The problematic image was this. So this was a photograph where he said that it's a couple who were having sex in a car, and basically he staged this photograph because one of the person in the car was his friend. So he made it and he took that photograph and he said, this is what happens in that town. So again, this particular photograph was dramatic because he captioned it that, this guy Philip lives in one of the most dangerous hoods. But the fact was that this man was a local figure, just a local guy who ran, he ran a liquor bar. They were fancy about him. So then again, caption becomes very important when you share photographs. It's just not a photograph, but the content that goes with the photograph. What are you trying to say is also very important because that can mislead viewers. So this is another very big controversy that happened, I think in 2003 or 4. So Brian Whiskey, a photographer, and basically he worked with the LA Times and he was covering the war. And I believe this is in Iraq. And this was a photograph from the same situation taken seconds apart. So on the left, you can see the soldier with the hand up, okay? So that is one image where the soldier is asking this guy to stop. And the next image is where the soldier is talking to this guy. And the guy is looking at the soldier, so there is eye contact. And what Brian did is he mixed both images and he produced the third image that you can see below as the image that happened because it's more dramatic. It says a lot. And this ran in the cover of LA Times, in the cover. So it was a big deal, right? Only later it was found that, he had mixed two images and produced it as a single image. And he was, he was asked to leave. He was asked to quit LA Times. So a lot of unfortunate things happen. And this is the reason why to work very diligently. And, if you don't get something, you don't get it. But don't try to make to get the brownie points, because if you don't have it, you're just unlucky, or you're not lucky enough, I would say. So again, this was another very big controversy. So the guy, I can't remember, his name is Simon, or I'm just losing his name right now. I can't remember, but I can share it in the chat. I'll just figure out. So there are covers of two magazines from the US, first time, and one is Newsweek. So on the right hand side, you can see the skin color, right, is a little different. On the left, the skin color is a little different. And both of them, both the magazine came out around the same time, because it was basically a lot of racial tension that happened after this. And Time magazine was criticized a lot for it, because they changed his skin color. They made him darker, and a lot of people got angry because of this reason. Like, how do you misrepresent someone, or how it was racial discrimination in clear words. So then the role of editors are also important, as what image you to show, how you choose to show it, because that has a lot of impact. So this is another problematic photograph, not because the photographer, but because of the way it was misrepresented. So this was from the Afghanistan war, and if you read the caption, it says the number of suicide bombings in Afghanistan in 2007 has surpassed that of the past 5 years combined. So how it is misleading is that the child that you can see was not wounded by the Taliban's or by suicide bombers. He was wounded by the American soldiers. So when the photographer submitted the photo, we submit a lot of photographs. For example, if you're going for a one-day assignment for a shoot, if you shoot 100 photographs, you'll select, edit it down, and then you send 10 to 15 images, and they all will carry captions, right? So this is how he sent it. And when they published this photograph, they changed the caption, and this is what they wrote. And the photographer came out very openly, and he said this is not the truth, and he quit his job. So another very famous photograph, this won the press award, I think in 2013 or 12. It was from Syria. These two children had died bombings, and that is when ISIS was at a peak, the trouble, and the Syria was going through a lot of disturbances. The war had erupted. And if you look at this image, just look at it very closely. If you can notice something which is unreal, and the unreal part is the light. If you look at the faces, there are some faces which are in shadow. There are some faces which are really highlighted. Now, shadow and highlights is nature, is natural. With sunlight, you are going to get shadow at certain parts of face, and certain parts are going to be in shadow. But if you look at very closely, you will see that certain parts cannot be highlighted. It has been manipulated. So when this work was awarded, a lot of people questioned it. It became a controversial issue. So World Press hired a forensic expert, and so this is what they tried to find out. So what you see in the background, you can see the structure in the background, right? Here it is pretty clear. But if you look at this, you can see that the structure was blurred a little bit. And then the next thing that you can see, this is how they had, the forensic expert. This is how they study the light. How is the light going to travel in what direction, and how is it impacting their faces? So when they saw that, they realized that he had increased the shadows a lot, only to highlight a few faces, and then he had, blurred. He had smudged the background. So after this forensic report came out, the world press thought that he did not remove anything from his photograph. He only, highlighted certain portions to make it more appealing, and it was not exactly against ethics. So they let the award be. But then again, it became a very big question. And from the next year onwards, World Press changed a lot of their rules of submission. And that's when World Press started asking all photographers to submit their raw files when they participate in the competition. So this is a photograph from Steve McCurry. I'm sure you all will know he's one of the most famous photographers in the world. And this is his work from Cuba. I had the opportunity to meet him. Before I met him, I really admired him. Once I met him so much. So this photograph, a few years ago, somebody noticed that there's something wrong in this photograph. And if you looked very closely, they found this. So can you see the pole coming out of this person's foot? So this was digitally manipulated. If you look at the entire picture, it is way at the back. It's not very visible. But then if you look at the huge print on the wall, you can see this problem. This is more zoomed in version. So can you see that? His half of his leg, his foot is missing, yes. And the pole, you can see the yellow pole coming out. So after that, everybody started talking like, if a person like Steve McCurry, so well recognized and who inspires so many photographers, if he has done work like this, how can we believe his work? And then it was found that he did more manipulations. There's another photograph of it. I believe this is Indonesia, and this particular photograph, because all the photographs, they look so dramatic, they look almost picture perfect. And if you're a photojournalist, if you're a documentary photographer, if you're not a fine art photographer, you cannot have, I'm not saying you cannot have, sometimes lucky, but it's not possible to always have 100% dramatic picture perfect images. Otherwise it will not be a documentary category.
Just 1 second. I want to just say that one, this is from Bangladesh.
Okay.
And the other thing I would want to ask is, you're talking about manipulation, but now, do you count filters as manipulation? Several filters which are now available. Is that a part of manipulation?
I'll come to that. I'll discuss this. I'm just taking a note. Thanks for saying this Bangladesh. I thought it was from Indonesia. Anyways, oh yeah, it's Bangladesh written. Sorry, I'm so sorry. So this photograph was manipulated, and this was a photograph that was published. So you see, this guy is missing from the back of his head. So there was some constructions done. The saturation was increased. So your question about filters, in photojournalism, we do not use filters. So this is more very recent. So this is a photograph that was shared by my friend. She's a photojournalist, and this photo was circulated in all social media, including Instagram, where my friend was tagged as the official photographer for this photograph. But this Time magazine that you can see with this guy folding his, I believe you can see his name, right? Chandrasekhar Azad by Soumya Khandal. So Soumya came out with a post that please do not use my name. I did not take this photograph, and this was never on the cover of Time magazine. But it had already circulated to his followers, to all his in his campaign. So a lot of people do certain things to influence, and this was one of them. So it's a little bit. So when we talk about ethical storytelling and responsible journalism, I'm sure all journalists, and you know that these are, when we share stories of people, the stories are theirs, it's not ours, right? Our job is just to say it the way it is. So determining the narrative is really important. How you portray the stories, the people, uh, uh, should not be the way you think them to be. In my TED talk, I had given an example of my experience in Nepal when I had gone to document child marriage. So honestly, when I was sitting on the plane and when I was going there, I thought, the girls that I'm going to meet, they are obviously forced by the parents. They are from poor families and they were married off. And when I went there, most of the girls that I met from that particular region, they all had eloped and married. I met more than 20 girls. And when I started asking them questions like why did you marry and why did you marry so early, some as young as 14 and 13 years. So of course, the preferential treatment that is given to boys, that was there. Girls were not really encouraged for education, and the parents could not afford to pay their school fees or even buy their books or uniforms. And even if the government had subsidies and they had free tuitions, they still needed to buy books and buy things for the school projects, and they didn't have money for that. So the girls opted to marry somebody of their choice instead. And that is the narrative that I went and found there. And that is the narrative that we showed, because that was what was happening. So again, the power dynamics. So when we go and meet people, or when we are focusing on a particular topic, whether it is violence, whether it is war or anything, there is always a power play. Even if you even if you don't realize it, because when you are going there, you have that power, you have that responsibility. That I'm going to share the stories and I'm going to ask them certain questions, and this is how much I'm going to filter out or filter in. So when you're shooting a photograph, it's very important, to show how things are as they are. I was once hired, I'm not going to take the name, by an institution from UK, and I was sent to Bhopal to work on a low-income neighborhood. And I was accompanied by one of their team members who had flown down from London. And every time I was talking to the people I was taking photographs, she would tell me that, why don't you shoot from top angle? Why are they so well dressed? Oh my God, it's not going to go with our story. And to be very honest, even if people are from low income neighborhoods, even if they live in the slum communities, when they see you, somebody, coming to their house, they obviously want to go inside, change and wear their best dress and come in front of you. If they see that you have a camera, sometimes they just want to look nice and feel good. And there is nothing wrong in it. You can perhaps tell them that, just be the way you are, it's fine. That is allowed. But if people are persistent and if they say that, no, I want to wear this dress and, I want to, just give me 5 minutes, you have that power to stop that person, but you should not, because then you are taking the power from that person to yourself. And that is not done, because people are doing you a favor by giving them their time and space. And it's very important for us to remember that. Next is informed consent. So for informed consent, what I mean is about model release. So I don't know if you are aware of modern release, but when we work for, we use something. I haven't seen this much in South Asia. I haven't seen this in Nepal or Bangladesh or in India. No way. People don't even know that it exists. But there's something called consent form on modern release, where you have the person giving you legally saying yes or no to you taking the photograph, and it has to have those clauses. It's basically a legal document, clauses that, okay, I'm okay with you taking my photographs. I'm okay with you sharing the captions, sharing my story. And this can be shown in international media. It can be shown globally. It can be shown in an exhibition. It can be circulated on the internet. So these are things that are written in the model release. So you just can't take that model release to somebody who doesn't even know how to read or write and just, okay, just please sign it. If the person doesn't know how to sign, you just take a thumb impression. So that is not informed consent. Informed consent is when you sit down with the person and you explain that, listen, I am doing this story and the purpose of the story is XYZ. And in the end, your story is going to be shared in XYZ publication. It can be on print, it can be on the web, and it can be also shared on social media. Are you okay with it? If the person doesn't know what social media is, you open your phone and you show them an example. Are you okay with it? So informed consent is very important, especially when you're working on sensitive issues. You're meeting a rape survivor or something related to domestic violence or even a war zone where you can put people in trouble for your photographs. So it is very important to make people understand what your role is and why you're doing it. And I think the most simple thing to do is just be honest, because honesty takes you a long way. Even if people don't understand, you can always explain things. And it has happened to me many times that people get scared when I take out the paper and when I ask them to sign. So, it just takes a little more time for you to sit down with them and explain, and they get it, they understand it. And sometimes what I do is that I also take informed consent in local languages. I have them translated, and I sometimes give them a copy of it. So I let them keep a copy and I take a copy, or sometimes if they have a smartphone, I ask them to take a photograph, or I take a photograph and I send it to them. So again, sensational. Unfortunately, the television in India is very sensational, and it's getting worse. And if you look at the digital media, things are changing. There's a lot of sensational journalism, sensational images, and stereotyping. How you stereotype certain things and you tell the same story again and again from the same gaze. So how do you break those? How do you overcome those and not follow the pattern that has been followed for years and years? For example, in my industry, there is a lot of discussion about diversity and about female representation, because photojournalism has been essentially a very male domain, and especially white male domain. Most of the magazines, they would send their people on a flight and send them to Vietnam and whatever country, wherever there's problem, they go there, almost like parachute journalism. They would go there, get a local producer, local fixer, and get the story. And then it's in the front pages of newspapers and magazines. And what goes missing there sometimes is the local nuances, those small layers that can add a lot of depth to the story. Having said that, I'm not saying that people don't do a good job. There are a lot of people who put in a lot of effort, research, and hard work to make stories happen. And sometimes what happens when you're too close to your own people or to a place, there are certain things you don't realize that is important, or because for you it's very common. But if you look from an outsider gaze, it could mean something. So again, this is like a very gray area, and it's kind of like a two side of a coin. And again, when it comes to photographing people, places, any issue, you have to be very careful about how you're representing people, and whether you are telling the things the same way that has been told over the years, or you're trying to show something different. And again, you don't want to show something different just to be different. You want to say something, you want to show something different because you see something else in it. Your vision is something else. So again, I spoke a little bit about representation. So even if people are in the worst of situations, representing people with dignity and care, I think it's very, very important. So intentionally provoking an emotional response, I think I gave an example earlier. So I have had some situations where I've seen certain things. I'm a good observer. So once I was traveling to Bangladesh, and there was this border exchange of the enclaves. This was a few years ago. And I was working in the borders for 2 months. And on August 31st, 2015, these enclaves were exchanged. And the governments, they had kind of kept, the enclaves, which was Bangladesh's, were turned. I mean, it's a long story. So to cut the long story short, before the August 31st, all the news channels of India and Bangladesh, they came to the border areas, and they were trying to show the stories of the people who were living in this enclave for years without any, identity, without any kind of passport, without any legal document, and their lives. And I remember I was sitting at one enclave with a family with whom I had spent several days, and there was this very, very big television channel. They had come, they're journalists, and I remember this guy asking them such uncomfortable questions, and the photographer, the video journalist, actually asked the women, can you go to the bank of the river and show me where you lost your house? And he made the woman go there, point her finger, and showed there, and he started asking her so many questions about how was your house like? Can you tell me how it looked like? How did you lose your cattle to the floods? What happened? How was your husband arrested? Blah, blah, blah. And this woman started crying. The moment this woman started crying, narrating her story, he started shooting. So this is very unethical. You cannot do something like that, So again, intentional provoking an emotional response. This is what I meant by that. Setting realistic expectations.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
With that, I also remembered how, some news channels were operating in Nepal when we were hit by the earthquake. And there was actually, there was a lot of backlash for Indian channels because it was usually them asking such questions, such personal questions when, somebody's lost a house or family member, and then asking, how did they die? What happened? And it actually caused, a hashtag saying back off Indian media.
Yes,
yes,
I saw that. I saw the big posters and the wall, F you, India and all that. Yes, I was there too. Unfortunately, this is true. And this is why I think ethics is so important, And it is not taught in schools. Everybody talks about getting a job, getting a paycheck, and having your face on the cover and having a photograph. But I think about this very, very seriously, because there is a lot of it missing, unfortunately.
Yeah, just some basic sensitivity when you're dealing with someone who's lost something.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. So let's move on to the next one. Setting realistic expectations. So again, this is something that I've seen it happen. It's not that it doesn't happen. If you're going somewhere and if there is something happening, and you want a story out of it, you want something out of it, and you know that you need that access. So you go there and you tell people that I'm going to give you this much money if you can, um, make me meet this person, or once your story is out, you are going to get a big grant, or you're going to get a job, you're going to be offered a government job, or some NGO is going to come and help you. So these are things that people like us should not say when we are out there in the field. Because if you give hope to people and if you cannot do it, it's not fair. And also it is not your job to give hope to people. Being a human is different, being sensitive towards them, talking to them, that is okay. But if you're promising them something in lieu of getting access, that's not done. And a lot of these things not just happens in Asia, it happens everywhere. I've seen it when I was living in the US, when I was living in New York, I've seen some things happen like that. And if you remember, there was this big storm that happened, the Sandy, right, in 2012. So after Sandy, there was this Staten Island, which is close to New York. And this island was devastated. There were a lot of homes that were broken down. And going to that island was difficult because we had to take this ferry and then we had to take the bus to reach. And basically, there were trees all over and it was really difficult. And at that point of time, there was certain photographers who went and met these families who had completely lost everything. Their sofa couches were outside. They were trying to gather some of the utensils and everything. And I remember one photographer going and speaking to a family, and the family was devastated. They were angry and was like, "Get out of here, we don't want you here." And this guy did not go away. He stood there and he started talking to them. And then he caught hold of somebody else who was a friend. And he said, "Well, I have some contact with the insurance company. I can put them in touch with them and maybe they can get it covered, provided they talk to me and they let me inside." So these are things that happens everywhere, and these are things that we should not do. And these are things that I think, as journalists, it's also a responsibility to share these things down the line with the younger generation, because the J schools don't teach it. They don't, unfortunately, not much. I'm not saying they don't, they do sometimes a little bit, but not much.
But I would like to chime in here because I am also working with students. In our university, we have master's students, PG students, right? And this is a huge problem when it comes to academia. There is a huge gap in industry academia relationships. People who come from the industry back to the academia, we are shocked at the kind of things that the students are taught. Yes, we are taught about fake news and we are teaching them, but the fact is a lot of these stories are actually digest to see how resilient that reporter was. Everybody was shooing her away, but she stood her ground, and those are glorified in Indian J schools, and that is a big problem that we see on a day-to-day basis. Because I have seen students discussing this, "Ma'am, I'll be here and I persuaded this out of them, or I coaxed this story out of them." These kind of terms are used कि मैंने तुमसे बुलवाया, तुमसे बुलवाने की आर्ट सीखो या learn to make them talk. So this is something that is actually rampantly taught in J schools, and specifically जो bilingual courses हैं India में. And that is happening a lot, and this is something that we need to address a lot. That is what I wanted to share, that it is instead of actually shaming these stories and telling that these practices are not ideal, what we are doing is we are glorifying these stories in academia. You see, this reporter did this and this is how they got the story, and this is what you need to do if you want to be a successful journalist. And ethically, that is wrong. So that is something that we need to address as industry people to the academy, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so happy that this workshop is happening, because this is such an important topic. And this is something that is not going to go away, unfortunately. I see it happen all the more. And I mean, I'm just one person and all of you are just one person, right? But at least we can start it somewhere. if people from the industry start talking about it through their social media, sharing their experiences during conferences, I think it can have an impact, and it is supposed to make an impact, because you cannot just throw bubbles in the air. Yeah.
So I think, like Debjani said, because I have suffered this problem. So I think more than the academia, isn't it that the editors need to be doing? I think editors need to be more sensitive. I have been in situations where a parent had lost their children, and I need to go and interview them. That is not done. You cannot talk to a parent just recently they have lost their child. So, but these things happen. I think what Debjani said is like insensitivity sells, and maybe that is rivalry or the TRP. I don't know what, but that is what sells and that is what is glorified. So until and unless, and it is for the journalists, if you're blaming the journalists and the photojournalists, they are just doing job because they have been pressurized to get it out of that situation. So isn't it an industry problem, especially in the about other countries? So isn't it like all the editors guild need to sit and talk about this, and stories should be based on ethics.
I would also like to add that what is being seen in crime in covering any news where there is blast, or if there is any calamity that is happening, what we are seeing is that the first story that you have to get is a human interest story, which evokes a very a response where you get the maximum eyeballs. So they want a line where which will be your headline, and the second thing that they want is if the reporter is not getting it, then it is completely put on the reporter's side. So if you want to be humane, either you have to be in a position where you can dictate terms and say no, I will not do it. If you are a young reporter, it is like they are just shooed into it and said no, you have to get this. So I think what I actually feel from a very long time is that the people on the top are not so sensitive. It's all about TRPs. It is all about eyeballs, and आज कुआं खोदा, आज पानी पिया और कल का छोड़ दिया. That kind of.
It's all about money. It's all about money.
Yes, it's true, because the fourth estate, as we call, we are all part of the fourth estate, but unfortunately this fourth estate has become a business venture.
I feel it doesn't exist anymore.
That's too strong. I think. But again, we all come with our different experiences. I did not share this, but before I became a photojournalist, I was a journalist, and I was working for a publication. And somebody from here was working there. I did not mention it, and I had terrible experiences, because when I put stories that I really want to work on, I said, no, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. So, I left the job because of my frustration, and I just changed my.
I've been criticized in many times in my career that you did not get out of this. I said I cannot. So this I have gone through this. I have suffered through this.
I understand.
And it's a constant pressure, and it's the pressure of your job. That's it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the industry is this way, and what do? Either you move on and work independent and make your own stories, or you go with the flow, which is like it's like getting into a machine and producing stories. Sometimes these stories lack depth. Sometimes you have to get the stories out of pressure using methods that are not ethical. And I understand, especially with young people, who get a job, they are somewhere working for a few months, and then they have this big, assignment, and they are sent there, and then what do you do? I don't know if you remember, there was this fire in Park Street. There was this building. Which was the building? Stephen House. There was a big fire, right? A few years ago. and the top of the building, there were chain put and people could not go to the terrace, right? And I went to cover that. And I went there every day for the next few days. And I saw some journalists, doing certain things out of pressure because they had to go and they had to write, they had to produce. I understand that, but it's high time that what Kaniza said, that it has to start from the top. But again, people from the top are answerable to the businessmen who don't understand journalism. So it's again a different debate. It's
a vicious circle.
It's a vicious.
But I think with the digital media, there is one thing that has happened, which of course, there are the kind of feedback that they get and the way the journalists view themselves. So this is also one factor which we must now take into account, because if your story is not the story which is at the ground, you have one set of people who maybe will be with you, who have given the story, but there is another set of people who are out there to tell you that what you are writing is wrong. So I believe that, the more we talk about it, more we get people to understand it, we will probably have a time, which of course will take a lot of time. Maybe we'll be too old by then. There will be some who will not be able to do it, because see, the kind of the way people are now, we all have ourselves branded a lot of news channels, a lot of newspapers, as well as a lot of content which we find is misinformation, disinformation. So I think, and I see a lot in the younger people, like I see a lot in young children, especially college going students and all, who refer to one news in different ways, and who are able to identify that this is right and this is wrong. So when you have that kind of category coming up, there will be a lot of pressure to, at least go back to balance, which will take time, probably maybe another 5 years, but it will happen. This is the way I look at it.
I'm hopeful too. And things that we do now, we talk about, we may be a minority, but we can leave a legacy behind. I mean, if we do the right thing the right way, we might not be whatever the photographer who is standing at Kargil war and doing blah blah blah. You know what I mean? But then, you leave behind certain things which will be valued, if not now, maybe later. And then at least know that you have done your work with honesty. If not anyone else, you are answerable to yourself, and you know that I have done this good work with conviction and in the correct way. At least you know it. And I guess I make peace with that. Okay, so the last one is providing link or copy to the finished piece once it's published. I know sometimes it's not possible. Again, you're doing one story here, you're going somewhere else, you're doing another story. Sometimes you don't have time to see your own story come out on print because you're on the road, right? But if it's a story which is of sensitive nature, where you're putting a lot of time and people are giving you time, you are going there for a few days, people are providing you lunch and they're treating you really well, they're hosting you, and basically, if people have certain expectations that can you please send me a copy, or when is it going to come out, very faster to get a copy and mail it to them or send them the link on WhatsApp. I mean, if it's an online thing, it's not a big deal, you can just send them the link. This is the least I think we can do. And I think it's a very nice thing to do, because it's like, why would people give you the time and why would they allow you into their lives? If the least we can do, I think it's because I don't think people do it. Most journalists don't do it. Yeah. So it's a all right. So the next, I'm going to talk about representation and working ethically. By ethically, I mean, I'm talking only about visuals. So this is a photograph taken in Tangail in Bangladesh. And this is a sex worker. By looking at her, you can tell that she's a minor with her 2 clients, right? So this photograph was awarded multiple times in many places. And I found this work very problematic. And the strange part was that this particular project was done by a friend of mine. She's a German photographer, a close friend. And this was another photograph from that same series. It's called The Longing of Others, I think. And so, you know, it got multiple awards, and it was about the status of women, of young girls who are living in these brothels, and then what are their lives about and how they're ill-treated. So the intention of the photographer was good, but I think was where she lacked was culture, because you know she got in touch with a local nonprofit, and then from the nonprofit took her to this place through which she got access to the sex workers. Okay. I spoke to her. She spoke to me, and then she asked me, "What is wrong? Why are people doing me?" And she didn't even understand that she had done something wrong, or there was something problematic in her photograph. I'm not saying wrong, but problem. So then I explained it to her that, listen, the girls that you have shot, some of them are minors, even if they are not minors, because Bangladesh, you know, the laws are a little different. We have POC, you know, with so I heard that suppose one of the girls that you see her, she is rescued a couple of years later, and she wants to go back home, and she wants to start a new life. How is she going to do it? And she didn't answer me. And then I told her to took away her future from her because of the photographs. You know, these are permanent records. Photographs are permanent records. Once they are out, they are out. You cannot stop it, right? So when you are photographing people, there are so many things that you have to take in mind. And the most important thing is that do not bring any harm to people that you photograph in any way. It is your responsibility. It is not a non-profit or anyone else who's taking you to that place, that person's responsibility. It is your responsibility to know that I should not be doing this, or I can do this in this way. So I just wanted to show, again, from the same series. So I just did not like this work, and I was very honest with her, and I told her, you know, why it did not. But she got global recognition. I think she got awarded for more than 15 awards she got for this work. So this is another very famous controversial photograph. This is a photograph by this guy called Shobit Datta. He's an Indian British photographer, and he would come down to his, he would come down to India and spend a few days, and he was making a project on, again, minor girls and the sex workers and on trafficking, right? And again, he got many awards, to the point that he got awards and grants over $50,000. And suddenly, there was one photograph, which I'm not showing now. If you want to Google, you can Google Shobit Datta's name and this girl's name called Beauty. So there was a photograph where he showed this girl getting raped by a client, and this girl was a minor. So that photograph was shown by Magnum, which is and Lens Culture. So Lens Culture, you know, they're pretty well known for the Portrait Photography Award. And to publicize their contest, it was on the head. It was a header photograph of this girl, Beauty, getting raped by a client. Where the client is on top of her, you can see the client's back, but you can see her face. And the photograph was taken from a top angle. So one photographer, he's again a very big critic of ethics in photography. His name is Benjamin Chesterton. If you want to follow him, he's really good on Twitter, and he will dissect everything, and he talks a lot about, ethics and representation. So when Ben saw this photograph, he was very disturbed, and he started talking about it. That why is the girl who's getting being produced as a head photograph of a contest to encourage people to participate in this contest? What bullshit is going on? And it was exactly this way how he started, and it started on Twitter. It became a huge thing. People started writing, people were angry. And then Shobit came to limelight because of that photograph, and lens culture came to limelight, and everyone was like, what's happening? What's happening? And then a few days later, there was not a photographer, this lady who was very interested in art and photography, and who followed the work of Mary Ellen Mark. So Mary Ellen is no more. She passed away a few years ago. She's a very renowned, very respected photographer. So Mary came to India, and she spent a lot of time in Bombay, in Kamajipura, in the red light area. And she photographed the sex workers, and she showed the way things were done with a lot of responsibility. So what Shobit did was, Shobit used Mary's work in his own work, and he made this photograph that you're seeing right now. So the woman that you see standing is from Mary Ellen's photograph. Can you see the difference? So once this came into limelight, it became a huge controversy in our industry. And if you just need to Google, you'll find a lot of things about this. So it became a lot of topic of discussion. And that's also when people from photo contest, they started asking photographers that if you are submitting your images along with the JPEGs, you have to submit your raw files. And now it's mandatory in most of the contests. You have to submit your raw files, because once you make your submission and you make through the first round, second round, when you're people will reach out to you, and they will ask you, please give your raw files. So your raw files are checked with the photograph that you submit to see if you have made any changes or not. And if they find any changes, you're automatically disqualified. So this is a video that I'm going to play. This is a very recent one.
Smita, the sound cannot be heard.
Oh, the sound can't be heard?
No.
Let's see.
Not yet.
There should be an option that says sound on your screen. Can you see it anywhere?
Smita, you are on mute.
Thanks, Shamik. So you could see the video, but you could not hear it, right? Okay, let me just play the video again, and let's see if it works this time. Hang on one second.
Just Smita, when you are sharing screen and selecting which screen you would like us to see, there is a big box, share sound.
Okay, hang on. Share screen. Okay, now I can see. Okay, thank you. It works. Yeah. It's somehow not allowing me Sucharita, can you play this video from your end?
Yeah,
do you mind?
Which the sequence number is?
I'll give you the sequence number. Hang on 1 second. It's if you open the entire file, entire folder, on the right hand side you can see everything is a JPEG image. There's just one video. Yeah.
Is just looking the way they're dressed. These are the refugees
Can't see
trying
the
to get
screen.
on trains.
Yeah, we are trying to fix it. Just
Population. And as you're talking to us, Matthew, we're playing in the latest pictures of some of the refugees trying to get on trains or trying to get out of Ukraine. And what's compelling is just looking at them, the way they're dressed. These are prosperous, I'm loath to use the expression, these are prosperous middle-class people. These are not obviously refugees trying to get away from areas in the Middle East that are still in a big state of war. These are not people trying to get away from areas in North Africa. They look like any European family that you would live next door to.
Fuck off.
Okay, so I took this video from Twitter. Somebody else had posted it, but I wanted to, please ignore the last part, but I wanted to share it because this is very recent and there has been a lot of debate and discussion on this issue of how the Ukrainian refugees are being spoken about and how the refugee situation from, from North Africa, East Africa, from the Middle East, from Syria, from Afghanistan, how they are spoken about. You can smell racism. It's almost on the face, right? There was another journalist who later kind of apologized because he used the word civilized. I'm sure you know about it. So again, if we say that it only happens in our region, it's not, it's everywhere. And that is why we have to be very careful. And again, representation is important and people might look different from you, but that doesn't mean they're lesser than you. And I try my best in my images and my work to respect people and show people, with dignity. So we don't have much time. So before we end, we have half an hour left. So I'm going to quickly go back to screen share and I'm going to share one body of work and I'll tell you how I worked on this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a project which I did in Central African Republic. By the name, you know that it's a country in the middle of Africa. It's a landlocked nation. And this is a country which is at war for the last almost 7-8 years now. So this is my first time that I was working in a war zone, in a conflict area. And my job was to show the stories of women who were kept as sex slaves. These are women who were who managed or they were allowed to go after some time. So uh, by the talk of it, you understand that this was very intense and it was a very difficult issue. And because of the war zone, we also had to be very important. I mean, we had to keep in mind in which area we were shooting, in which area we were asking the women to come, because we could not go to their homes in most places. Some places we could go. And some of the women, we didn't want to go to their houses because they would be gossip, and people would get to know certain things which they didn't want to share because they had started a new life completely. Some of the women, their husbands, just left them with their children to take care of because they said, okay, now that you were taken by the militia, you are their wife and you are dirty and we don't want you. So when we met the women, the first thing that I kept in mind is just because these are women, who, I mean, most of the women that we documented, they were all adults, they were over 18, and there was no problem in showing their faces or revealing their identity. But I was working with a researcher from Human Rights Watch, and she's the one who knew them for almost 2 years. And her name is Hillary. So Hillary and I had a discussion prior to meeting the women, and we said, like, let's not show the women because first of all, it's a war zone. And they have lost their families in a way because they are deserted women. They're living a very difficult life. And we don't want to stigmatize them further or bring any kind of problems. So the first thing is, for me, visually it's been very challenging as to how do I show and not show. It's very tricky. It's almost like solving a visual puzzle. But there are always tricky, creative ways, and I use anything that is available to me. So there was this lady that you're seeing, this was a one-room shelter that she had taken in a market neighborhood. And her story was very similar to the other women, that she was, she had 4 children and her husband left her for another woman. And so when I went to photograph her, when we went to interview and speak to her, I noticed the mosquito net. And that is how I use this mosquito net. I don't use any filter. If you're asking that question, you're not allowed to use filters or anything that is, I would say, done later. What you shoot is what you get, and that is how you produce the work. So this was a 50-year-old woman who was, her husband was killed in front of her, her son was killed in front of her house was set in fire. And obviously she was very traumatized. So this is the way how I photograph her. Sometimes you really don't have to show the faces, and there are many ways of how you can show things and yet tell a story powerfully. This woman that you see, this is her child, and this child was born out of rape. So her story was very, very intense. And I wanted to show a mother and child, because what she told me is that even if she knows that the child was born out of sexual slavery, she has started loving her child because the child is innocent. And I wanted to show this mother and son bonding. And this is how I showed the photograph. This is another woman. She had similar story, like a woman deserted, and some of the stories were just horrible. This lady, she had a beer bottle shoved inside her. And the militia asked her to carry water every day from the river. And one of the women I met, she was the militia, and then they kicked her stomach every day until she had a miscarriage. So this was one of the villages that we went to meet. And how I took this photograph. So it was raining, as you can see. I wanted to show her hut. I wanted to show where she lived and how her life is. And I wanted to show her in a dignified way and not show her face. So what was, I sat inside the car, and the glass of the car had developed the moisture, so I used that, as a layer, and then I shot through the glass, and this is the photograph that I got. Again, I used lighting in certain ways. These are a group of women who are living together, and helping and supporting each other. And this is how they ate. This was their staple food. And this was a public school that was made into a refugee camp. And most of the women I met, they were living there. They were taking shelters. This child was burnt, living in one of those refugee shelters in the school because they were cooking food outside, and he went and touched one of the pans. And these were the UN peacekeeping forces. Basically, they were the ones who were maintaining peace in the country, in certain parts of the country. And this is a portion of the school. So we walked through some of the neighborhoods which were comparatively peaceful, and we just wanted to show daily life of people in spite of the war, how life goes on. So these are some of the images that I took from there. And this is one of my favorite image because, this guy was teaching math to these two guys, and you can see, their resilience. And this is a beauty parlor, very important. This was one of the market. And this is the last image, I believe, from another village. Okay. All right, so Q&A. Any questions? Anyone wants to make a point? Not necessarily a question. We can just have a discussion.
Yeah. So far, we have got one question from Aditi. What about color correction, adjusting brightness, etc.? Are those considered necessary edits for publishing, or shouldn't be done too?
So they are not called edit. There's a difference between editing and retouching. Editing is when you edit a text, what do? You read and you take out certain sentence, you add certain sentence. Something very similar happens for visuals. I'm going to show you an example. I have my hard drive. And to answer your question about editing and retouching, you are allowed to do a little bit of contrast. You are allowed to, if you want to darken a certain portion, you can do that, but you are not allowed to manipulate something which is going to change the context of the story. A little bit is okay. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again, and I'm also going to show you about raw files. What is a raw file? So this is one of my work that I did in India on surrogacy. So this is an edit, and why I say an edit is because it has been made into a story, one after the other, right? So editing is basically when you put one image after the other when you edit and sequence. So if you look at the wider edit of the same story, I have 390 images, right? So these are all the images that I shot. Okay, so, and we edited it down to 26. So this body of work, this was published in Time magazine last year. And, you know, they selected these 24, I mean, I selected this 26 images and I sent it to them. And basically these images were published and these 10 images published. So this is what editing is. Now, when I talk about retouching is something that is, I'm just going to show you some. Is this boring? Is this helpful? I'm not sure. I mean, is this,
very
does
helpful.
it? Yeah.
Yes, completely makes sense. Interesting.
Okay, so this was one assignment that I did for New York Times, and this was on Chandro Tomar. So I'm just going to show you what kind of, first of all, let me show you the raw file. Hang on. I wasn't prepared for this, but I thought this could be helpful. I'm so sorry. It's taking me a little while to show. Okay, just let me just open something and just show you. Okay, so this is the raw image. Nothing has been done to it. Okay, so when you see a raw image, so can you see this LEN? Can you see 35, the number? So this is the number that I gave in my camera settings, okay? But when you see this, NEF, NEF stands for the abbreviation for any Nikon cameras. It's called a raw file. It will not be a JPEG. Okay, so all the files, everything that I shoot, everything is on raw. You cannot, so a raw file, when you submit a raw file, you cannot do anything to it. You cannot change it. So editors, if they want to verify, if they have a question about any image of yours, you can ask for a raw file. And then when you see the raw file and when you compare it with the JPEG, then you know that, okay, nothing has been changed or manipulated. Okay, so what kind of retouching can be done? So I'm just going to do a small retouching, and this is what is acceptable. So this is something which is called the white balance. You know, how do you select a white balance? Because the color temperature is always different in different places. So when you see this, you see the number 25, 24, 25. So this is basically to select the white balance. So you can see there's a bit of change done in the light, you know. The white is more white, the blue is more blue. So this is like a true color. And if you want to change a little bit of thing, maybe you can increase the contrast a little bit. If you bring out the shadows, maybe you can bring out the shadows a little bit, right? And nothing more than that. You cannot do something like this saturation, which many photographers do, but you know, a professional would never do something like this. Okay, so basically, you know, something in this area like exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, these are the things which are acceptable to some extent, not much of it. So I wanted to show you a raw file to show you the difference between my edited and my unedited. So I'll show the raw files. So this photograph, you know, this was not the final. Okay, let me just use this photograph, okay? So suppose this is a photograph and you want to submit it and you realize that, okay, I can't show this woman's face. What do I do? So you go here, okay? And you crop this photograph. And you submit this photograph to your editor. So does it fall on the lines of correct photojournalism or ethics? Like if I just increase the exposure a little bit, increase the contrast, and if I submit this, while the actual image is what I did before trimming where the woman's face can be seen. I'm just stopping my screen share. So is that allowed? It is not allowed. It is not allowed because you are changing the basic content of the image. If you had shot that particular photograph without the woman's face or a half of the woman's face, it is allowed. It is fine. You can increase the contrast, little bit of brightness, you can bring out the shadows. But if you change something which is changing the entire context, then it is not. I mean, internationally in my industry, will be blacklisted. Any other questions?
I have a question. Can I say instead of typing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. This is Sahana here. Now, in my domain in environment and science reporting, we do a lot of wildlife trafficking stories, and we collaborate with researchers, who get us a lot of field data, raw data. And among those data, we also get a lot of good photographs, but we do not use all of those photographs because we have a fear that it could be sort of like potential traffickers could use those images to go back to that place, and we could become an enabler in an illicit activity in that way. But what are the other steps that I as a journalist can take when I'm using the photographs or when I'm sourcing the photographs? Is there a way to remove some kind of trace from those photographs before I use them?
So, again, if I say you have to remove some kind of trace, then it falls under the dark area of ethics, right? But your intention is for the good purpose. So I did a particular story. I mean, it was a big project of 7 years of work, which was on human trafficking, basically sex trafficking in South Asia, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and this was for the National Geographic magazine. So before I started this project, I started to study law on POCSO, on everything, and then I went to the field. So obviously I had to keep in mind that any minor girl, I cannot show her face, and also if she's a minor, by the time the story publishes, she should be 18. So everywhere I went, I took her birth certificate, or I took a copy, I took a photograph of her birth certificate for my own records that I was not breaking the law, So for your thing, it's a little different because you are dealing with animals and traffickers. Again, it's crime and it's different area, right? But there are certain places where there could be, some tribal people or people living on the fringes of the forest where the traffickers could go and harm them. So removing certain signs or removing certain things, I think whoever is the photographer, you have to give certain guidelines that don't show this, don't show that, or be careful not to show this. Don't show an area where you can see a name of the shop with the address, or don't show a street sign, or don't show something which is relevant where people can actually go and identify. Don't do that. So I think beforehand, there are a lot of precautions that one needs to take beforehand before you go there. This is the difference between writing and photographing, because when you go there, you are there, In writing, you can do certain changes later on, but in photographing, when you're out there, you are out there. It's much more challenging. So there are a lot of things that you need to keep in mind, that you need to research on before you actually go and shoot. So I guess you need to give certain guidelines.
Agreed. And also, like what I was also saying, that we also collaborate with researchers, right? So they are not, they are not groomed into ethics of journalism or photography as such. So there's, sometimes like we also hit a roadblock with them, and when we talk to them about sourcing photos, and they'll just give us these specific photos which we feel that we can't use. But then at the other end of the spectrum, we feel that even a basic photo, like without revealing too much information, would work, at least to maybe draw attention to a subject which is so it's not really highlighted as such in mainstream media. So that's what we've been sort of juggling with. But yeah, I mean, even researchers also sort of have embraced that that journalists will not use all the photographs they supply. So I guess maybe sensitizing them also is a way to look at at this subject. Yeah.
I think so. And maybe you can encourage them to take some workshops. There are many workshops available, which help in photography. I mean, and I also work with, currently I'm working with some researchers and scientists for another project on environment. And I have so many friends from NatGeo who regularly work with researchers. So sometimes they reach a dead end because there is a difference in opinion. And the researcher might think that, okay, this is how it should be. Why are you not showing it? And the photographer said, it doesn't make sense visually. It is boring. People are not going to make any sense of it. Because, the left and the right brain, there is a difference between how a creative person is going to see and how somebody who is researching and put so many years behind it is passionate about. So sometimes it needs a little more focusing. It's a little bit more patience, to make them understand.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I really love what you said about, sort of forcing someone to elicit a response, because this happens a lot when I've seen when people report on, for example, cyclones or extreme weather events. And it's become the mainstay that, somebody crying about a loss or something that, becomes that image really becomes the story, and then everything sort of gets pushed under that, and then to reach that image to that point, what you said, how you question, and then you reach a point where a person sort of breaks down. Yeah, I think that's very important to represent people in a way that also dignifies them. Yeah, thanks a lot for this.
Sure. Any other questions before we end?
Yes,
the
I
session?
had one question and something to say. I wanted to know, how did you click that mother and child picture? What was the technique?
I'm going to share all my
tricks of the trade.
All right. So what I did is that whenever I am outside shooting, I always wear a scarf. And for photojournalists, scarf is like, it's like, you are a photojournalist, you will have a scarf. It's like the trademark. And there's a reason behind it, because we work in such difficult situations. Sometimes the scarf can be used for multi-purpose. You want to lie down somewhere, put it on the grass, put it somewhere, lie down, you want to clear off your sweat. So I used a scarf. It was of kind of translucent material, and it had some patterns of floral patterns. So I put the scarf in front of me. I told my local producer, can you please hold it with both of your hands? I tied it to one side of the door, and he held it to the other side. And I looked through that scarf and I took that photograph, and I positioned the floral imprints on the child and her face in such a way that they cannot be identified.
And also I want to tell that your German friend, those profile pictures were really disturbing to me, of course, because I understand this because I put in a lot of thought into it, that why do people do this, but they do it. And like you said, that your friend or anybody who has won many accolades and awards, but isn't that is what they want, right? After doing, all the manipulation and Photoshop, everything, that is what they want: name, fame, money, and so we are talking about ethics.
No, we are talking about
everyone,
a few. I'm talking about a few minority. Just a few bad fishes doesn't mean the entire pond is bad. There are so many good photographers. There are photographers who have ensured that their work has been monumental in bringing policy change. There's a photographer called Donna Ferrato. She has worked so much on domestic violence that because of her work, the US government came out with the Domestic Violence Act, the law. So it's not that people are not doing things or they're not working with honesty. There are, but there are bad fishes.
Yeah, so they want, because of some materialistic pleasure.
Who knows what they want? Maybe they want fame, maybe they want money, they want more recognition, they want more grants. Who knows what their intention is? And sometimes when I spoke about Sandra's, when I showed her example, she's not a bad person, and her intention was not the awards or the money. She didn't understand the culture. Yeah. Because she's somebody from Germany, she didn't do enough research and she did not study the culture. That's why I say that, knowledge of the local culture, knowledge of the people, what should not be done, what is okay. You're going to an Islamic nation, put your headscarf, please cover yourself.
What's okay for me not be okay for somebody else.
Exactly. So it's very important to know that. That's what I meant. Yeah. Any thoughts? Anyone wants to leave any kind of feedback, thoughts, any other notes? Okay, everyone is thinking, was it so boring that no one has anything to say?
I had so many things to say. I loved it.
No, not at all. In fact, it was very good. We have been able to express quite a bit.
I'm glad. So I'm going to end the session and hand over to Sir. If any of you at any point wants to reach out to me with any questions, with any queries, Sucharita will provide you with my email and with my phone number. I'm available most of the time, So any questions, even if you want to discuss something at your work that you are finding some confusion, I'm happy to, help. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
so
Smita.
much.
We are getting a lot of feedback in the chat box. So thank you so much. A very, very enriching discussion, I must say. Thank you, Smita, and thanks to all our participants for being so interactive, sharing your experiences, citing examples from your respective contexts. Smita, when we were deciding about the topics of the series of webinars that we were planning about, we knew that few of the topics are going to be really uncomfortable, but we also understood that this is high time we talk about this. Until they're widely spoken about, realities are discussed, or way forwards are brainstormed upon, nothing is going to change. So when you cited the example of the woman from Bangladesh who lost her home, probably everything, and her husband was arrested, and how the photographer was shooting uncomfortable questions to her just to make the footage look really interesting. Or maybe the example that Pawan shared from Nepal. Relatable. I personally have started avoiding certain media channels, especially during pandemic times, because their ways of portraying situations, characters, or any mishap, for example, are beyond any ethical boundary. All they want is possibly to make the news of, their news the most sensational one in terms of maximum TRP or maybe profit. And after you discuss so many examples from all across the globe, we realize that how wide scale this trend is now. It's kind of omnipresent, I should say. So, and also thank you for explaining so many different layers of unethical journalism and what are crucial things we must learn and also keep in mind when we are on the ground zero. Certain things have been normalized in a way that we have forgotten that they are wrong. Like using of filters. I'm sure that most of us, I did not realize that my video is off, sorry. So most of us have become very comfortable using these filters. But we did not realize that this can be a very critical thing when we are
it's okay for social media. For social media, it's fine. You want to put it on your Facebook, Instagram, it's fine. But if you're using it for publication, for your professional work, then no, it's not okay.
Yes. So we need to understand that how much or like up to what extent and in what way. These are very crucial things that we have learned from today's session. And end of the day, I would like to believe in what Aditi wrote in the chat box, that ethical organizations, ethical editors, they also exist. Maybe small in number, maybe the organizations are a small scale. So, and this is why it becomes more important for us to highlight them more than ever and bring them to the limelight, and so that the younger cadre can understand what this ethical journalism is all about and how you should not be losing your values and ethics when you are in your professional sphere. So on this note, I would like to conclude today's session with more expectations from you on this topic. maybe during our final physical workshop. So thanks once again. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Take care, stay safe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank
And
you. Bye-bye.
as Nita said, any question, any query you have, you may write to me and I'll be happy to connect you with Smita. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
you.